Ghostbusters Afterlife. The Bob's Burgers Movie.
Say it's soft and it's almost like praying, Maria.
West Side Story. What do all three of these films have in common? Those are just three of the movies that are on my list of the 10 best movies of the decade so far. And taking a look at the top 10 movies of the decade so far, according to me, is the subject of the special edition of Talking About the Movies, as we continue to celebrate 20 years of me talking about the biggest new releases of the weekend. And this is the first of our several 20th anniversary specials we have planned for the year. We have specials all year long. Throughout sporadic weeks, whenever there isn't a big new release to talk about, we have no big new movies to talk about. We do one of these specials that every once in a while. So like this week and next week we'll have we'll have special anniversary editions. This week looking at the best movies of the decade so far. Next weekend looking at the worst movies of the decade so far. And throughout the rest of the year we'll have stuff like the best movies I've seen in the last 20 years, the worst movies I've seen in the last 20 years, the best and worst movie years of the last 20 years, the best overlooked gems of the last 2 decades. There'll be a 20th anniversary special on the weekend when I started doing my reviews on April 13th. So, this is the first of several specials you're going to be seeing throughout the course of the year. So, I hope you enjoy these, and let me just tell you right now, these lists were not easy to put together, especially this first one here, because the decade so far has not really given us a whole lot of, an emphasis on what this decade of movie making is about. How how you can look at other decades like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 10s. You can tell what movies were coming that were going to define the decade as a whole. We haven't really had that this decade so far, even though we're halfway through, and I think mostly because of what happened at the beginning of the decade, with the pandemic happening, a global pandemic that really caused a lot of the movies to come out over the next couple of years. There hasn't been a significant style or look to the movies nowadays that really have distanced this decade from, say, the last decade. So, on top of that, though, the movies you're going to see on this list here are just movies that I remember seeing this entire decade, and I thought were really, really good and had memorable moments to all of them. This was a very tough list to put together here. To look at a lot of movies that I really could have put on this list in general did not make the list here. Like films like standout films like Top Gun Maverick, Spider-Man No Way Home, like these big Deadpool and Wolverine, like movies that had a lot of great memorable moments to those films. Those did not make the list. The smaller films, most of them did not make the list in particular, so that's why I kind of separated those into the underrated gems category that I have later on in the year. But yeah, these are the 10 movies that I saw that I've seen in the first 5 years of this decade, and I feel like are going to be the movies that are going to define the decade as of right now. And certainly these are movies that are going to stand the test of time throughout the rest of the decade, depending on what happens over the next 5 years. Which ones will shuffle out, which ones will shuffle back in. It's hard to tell. So, these are my personal picks for the top 10 best movies of the decade of the 2020s so far. So starting off at number 10 on my list, we have a movie that was not a big hit when it came out, and sadly it was not a big hit. In the Heights, directed by John Chu, who is now making waves with Wicked. Of course, that's the big hit right now, but this was a film that was originally supposed to come out in the summer of 2020, but of course, with the COVID pandemic, it got pushed back, and this was one of the films that sadly had the unfortunate distinction of being part of the HBO Max Warner Brothers deal of, we're going to release these movies on the same day in theaters as well as on HBO Max, because we have no idea how to work during the COVID pandemic, and this one sadly got lost in the shuffle. It was a film that had a budget of $55 million and didn't even make that back, and had to make $200 million to break even, and it sadly didn't. And I say sadly a lot because this was a really damn good musical that got sadly pushed aside here. This is based off, of course, of Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical as well. He also did Hamilton earlier in the year, which was basically the stage show recorded for film, and that was actually my favorite film of 2020. But This is his musical telling the story of a corner in the predominantly Dominican community of Washington Heights neighborhood of the Upper Manhattan in New York City, where every member of the community pursues their little dreams for a better life. And you have the story of Usnavi, a sympathetic New York bodega owner who saves every penny a day as he imagines and sings about a better life. And yeah, this was a really good movie. A film I relatively came in unknown. I like Lin-Manuel Miranda's last film, Hamilton, where I didn't really know the music know too much about the story, except the fact that it was a Lin-Manuel Miranda music. So the music was probably going to be very catchy as hell, and I wouldn't stop humming them days after I watched the film, which is still very much how I felt about this movie in particular. Yeah. The music isn't on the same level as Hamilton, but there are still really solid and well-executed musical numbers with catchy lyrics and musical compositions, and some pretty impressive set work on the numbers themselves. I think the cast overall is terrific. Anthony Ramos shows off his star-caliber potential as Usnavi, as he's really giving a terrific performance in this, as everybody else in the cast. Melissa Barrera as Vanessa, Corey Hawkins, Leslie Grace, Olga Meredith giving this terrific performance as Abuela. Jimmy Smits, who will never turn in a bad performance no matter what movie he's in. He's great playing in this movie. Daphne Rubella Vega, Gregory Diaz IV, Stephanie Beatrice, Dasha Polanco, Mark Anthony, all have really good roles in the film that I feel like are getting kind of pushed aside. But for the times that he's in the film, I mean, he really is solid playing Gapo de la Vega. Mark Anthony he's just really, really good. The visuals are impressive to look at, not just in the musical sequences, but also the set designs I think are very, very well done. For a movie that does not have a big budget, it's amazing some of the levels of detail they go to bring Washington Heights to life in this. There are a couple of little nitpicky things. My only real complaint about the film is that it does kind of stretch itself out a little bit in the third act. There are parts where you can easily cut the stuff out just to get it under 2 hours, but it's never a point where it overstays its welcome, and there were definitely things that they could have cut out to make the movie much smoother editing-wise, but besides that, though, this is a really good movie. From the casting, to the music, to the writing, to the visuals, this was a really good film. It was the most fun I had with a movie, one of the most fun times I had with a movie that year in 2021, and it's one that I think a lot of people should really go out and see. It's a very underrated musical, really great film, especially if you saw Wicked just this past holiday season. If you like Wicked, you're going to love this movie. In the Heights is definitely worth it. Number 10 on my list of the best films of the decade so far. Number 9, Ghostbusters Afterlife, also in the same year that In the Heights came out. This is the fourth installment of the Ghostbusters series, and one that negates the remake and basically says that this is the first film since the original Ghostbusters, which in some ways kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, there's definitely parts of that where I disagree with you on that, but the story here is that you have a single mother, played by Carrie Coon, and her 2 kids arriving in a small town, and they begin to discover their connections to the original Ghostbusters, and the secret legacy their grandfather, Egon Spengler, left behind. And Ghostbusters Afterlife really was my favorite movie of 2021. It's a movie where I enjoyed the hell out of it. I really found myself getting sucked in right from the get-go, and the film never really lets go. It's a hell of a ride all across the board, and it feels like you're watching a movie straight out of the 1980s. It really does have that 80s movie vibe, a la Explorers and The Goonies, mixed in with a little bit of Stranger Things and Super 8, but adding in Ghostbusters in there as well. It really impresses the levels the film goes to capture the spirit of the original Ghostbusters while also setting itself up in a more modern setting. I think the cast overall is great. McKenna Grace is really good as Phoebe. She has a lot of charisma and charm that she brings to the performances. She's got a very promising future as an actress. I mean, she was also one of the best things in *Malignant* that same year, too. Finn Wolfhard playing the brother... Finn Wolfhard playing the brother is also very good as well. He does get kind of overshadowed by Grace to the point where you do forget at times that he's there, but like I said, he's pretty good. He's actually really good in this. Carrie Coon, I think, works very well playing the mother, Callie. I love her chemistry with Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd was really good in this film, too. The other kid characters, Podcast and Lucky, I felt like were kind of pushed to the side. They didn't really leave much of a lasting impact. And there's even a bit towards the end where Lucky's kind of forced into getting turned into Zool at the end, and it really does feel forced. And let's talk about the nostalgic elements of the movie, because, yeah, there's a lot of fan service moments and callbacks to the original Ghostbusters films in this, and I know there are a lot of people who've criticized these movies recently for doing that, but I love what they did with the callbacks, and at least in this one. Frozen Empire, you can maybe make an argument that, yeah, they're kind of right on that, but I thought they did a really good job with the callbacks they had in here, bringing back a lot of the classic moments in here. A couple callbacks and references that are kind of forced in, but they are very few and far between. They bring back a lot of elements from the first movie, like Gozer, Zool, Vince Clortho, the main antagonist of the movie, and the movie retcons most of the Ghostbusters sequels, which, again, there's a scene where they go to raise a cult bookshop from the sequel. That's still in the movie. And yeah, it's great seeing Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson together in the climax. And the way the climax is presented is so well done. I'll get to that in just a second. But I love how there's also different types of genres here. You got the comedic aspect. You got the horror aspect. You got the supernatural aspect. You got the dramatic aspect. A wide array of genres all throughout this movie, and that's the power of what Jason Reitman brings to the table with this as the director. But the first half is great to me, but the second half of the film is where it really took itself to another level, specifically in the final 10 minutes. You got the characters fighting off Gozer, which I gotta say, they made a pretty good job of making Olivia Wilde look like the Gozer from the original movie, and I do like how dark and twisted the humor can get early on, especially with the mini Stay Puffs in the Walmart scene. But the last 10 minutes, you got everybody fighting Gozer and Phoebe using the proton packs to fight Gozer off, and the OG Ghostbusters are joining in with their packs. And then all of a sudden, the ghost of Egon is right next to his granddaughter, helping her to hold the proton pack as they take down Gozer. And I gotta say, they really did a good job of this Egon ghost. That's Bob Gunton, who's actually doing from what I believe to be part of the acting work on that. Also, Ivan Reitman did that, which makes this even more tragic considering that Ivan Reitman passed away not too long after this movie came out. And, Harold Ramis has been dead for almost over 10 years now, and I don't know how they were able to make that work as well as they did, but it's impressive visual effects work. And yeah, the last 10 minutes really does make you teary-eye at the end. Something I never thought I would say about a Ghostbusters movie, and yet you have this nice, touching tribute to Harold Ramis' legacy done very well, and greatly benefiting from not having him speak at all, and it's just him as a projectile spirit, and it's done so well. It's just, it's a triumph on a number of levels, and you gotta leave it to Ivan Reitman's son Jason to carry on that legacy with a strong piece of nostalgic entertainment. Ghostbusters Afterlife really is a triumph on a number of levels, and hey, you gotta leave it to Ivan Reitman's son Jason to carry on the legacy with a strong piece of nostalgic entertainment that really was the best thing I saw that year. It was one of the reasons why it was so great to go back to the movies after such a long, long time of waiting. It really was something you needed to see on the biggest screen possible. A very funny, very action-packed, scary, well-acted, emotionally investing powerhouse of a film, delivering, definitely belonging up there with the original Ghostbusters. It was the best movie I saw in 2021. It was well worth the watch. Number 8 is a film I wasn't really expecting to have on this type of a list, but then again, considering how the Bob's Burgers series has gone on to become something much different than it was after the movie, I feel like I have to put this on here. Number 8 is the Bob's Burgers movie. In this film, the Belchers try to save their restaurant from closing as a sinkhole forms in front of it, and the kids are also trying to solve a mystery that could save their family's restaurant. And all the Fox animated shows to make into movies, I never would have thought Bob's Burgers would ever get the big screen treatment. I mean, it didn't really feel like there really was much you can do with Bob's Burgers as a whole in terms of an animated movie, especially considering it's been one of the one Fox show that has been really kind of a show that has been consistently enjoyable throughout the majority of its run. And it's not surprising that the movie actually is not only good, but it's really damn good. I had a really good time watching this movie, and anyone who even though hasn't not seen the TV series, I think it's honestly fairly easy to know what goes on even without knowledge or even seeing the TV show. You could still get into the adventure the film has to offer and know all you need to know about the characters in particular. The premise isn't anything too amazing or deep or groundbreaking. It's mostly kind of a mix of a meshing of like the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the Simpsons movie, and the Hey Arnold movie, among other TV adaptations, but it never really affects the outcome of the movie itself because so much of it is working on other levels. The comedy in particular, I think, works very well. The comedy is very good. The dialogue by the voice actors is so well done. The writing works well to the advantages. There's a lot of good dialogue, heavy humor that works here, and great visual gags to go along with it. The animation is incredible in this. This is definitely a major upgrade from the TV show. And you have a lot of really good animators on this, really letting themselves go. Like the co-director, this Bernardo Derriman, who you could tell he was influenced by James Baxter's animation style because, he brings that energy to this movie and it just really adds another layer to it. Like, it's just very well done stuff. Very damn good animation. Like, you can see a lot of Disney animation styles throughout this film overall. The voice work, top notch. Everybody fits into the roles very well. The heartfelt and emotional moments in this are very well done. You know, the storyline with Louise and her hat gets a really nice resolution in this. The music is so catchy, man. The songs in this movie are incredible. Every summer I have to play the song Sunny Side Up Summer, the opening song of the film. It's just like that song is definitely a lot better than a million times than the songs that they play on TV. They play on the radio is like the summer anthem or the song of the summer. No, the song of the summer is Sunny Side Up Summer until there was another better song that comes out of this beforehand. But I also like that despite the near 2-hour runtime, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it moves at a fast enough pace. I like the fact that it didn't go over what you expect from the show. It doesn't go too big or epic, and it's nice to see a TV adaptation stay in the same style on the big screen as it does in the TV show. I do feel like you're watching an extended... It does feel like you're watching an extended episode of the show, but I say that in the best way possible, man. This is a really good movie. It's a really good movie that I can't believe I would even go to say this, but here we are really with the next great Disney animated classic. I mean, this is definitely something that could be in the same cult vein as something like a Goofy movie or the Chipmunk Adventure, which technically is a Disney movie because it has a lot of Disney animators involved in it, and maybe even the early Peanuts movies, like A Boy Named Charlie Brown, one of my favorite movies, and Snoopy Come Home. It's really a well-made, fantastic animated movie that will not only appease fans of the show, but non-fans as well. It was great seeing this on the big screen. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. The Bob's Burgers movie, my number 8 favorite film of the decade so far. Number 7 on my list of my favorite movies of the decade so far just came out this past year theatrically. Hundreds of Beavers. This was a film that was originally shot in 2019, didn't get officially released until 2022 at Fantastic Fest, and then didn't get an official theatrical release until 2024. And then finally made it to video on demand in 2024, and just recently got a physical media Blu-ray release this year. You have Ryland Twos, who plays Applejack maker Gene Kayak, who, in trying to win the hands of a merchant's daughter, finds himself embroiled in a conflict with beavers. And what they do with this film, it's shot in black and white. It's a film that features a lot of slapstick comedy. I mean, this is stuff that's in the veins of something like, Abbott and Costello, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Looney Tunes, The Three Stooges. There's even a little bit of John Wick action style in here with some of these action sequences that they have in here. This is an impressive accomplishment, man. This is such a really good, fun movie. This is one of the best comedy experiences I've had in a long, long time. I was really amazed at how much I enjoyed this film. I mean, it's a film that is so impressively put together. It can look cheap a lot of the time, but it works because the comedy is so damn good. The acting is top-notch. There's very little dialogue in here. The visuals are so impressive to look at. It's amazing this thing only cost $150,000 to put together. And every bit of it is on the screen, man. Like, there's a reason why I picked this director as the best director at the Reviewing Network Awards yesterday. Because this is a film that definitely is well worth it. This is a film that's going to become a cult classic in the years to come. And I can't wait to tell people to go check this movie out, because this is definitely one you need to see. Hundreds of Beavers is incredible stuff. It's worth every minute of it. It's a great film. I can't recommend it enough. My number 7 favorite film of the decade so far, Hundreds of Beavers. At number 6, we have one of this decade's Best Picture winners at the Academy Awards, and boy, it's well worth it. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, from Daniels. This is the story about Michelle Yeoh, who's an aging Chinese immigrant, swept up in an insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes, connecting with the lives she could have led. And this is a really damn good movie. It's a great movie in the multiverse. 2022 was a very big year for the multiverse with this. And then following a couple weeks later, we had Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And like, this is a film that is definitely really, really damn good. This is a film that was very high on my list of my favorite films of the year of 2022. And this was just a great fun ride. The concepts premise were great alone. The concept of how this movie perceives the multiverse, and when done right, can lead to a lot of creative and wonderful potential for this film, and it delivers on every bit of that. Kind of like with Hundreds of Beavers, for a film that only cost $25 million to make, they do the best with that money, and it shows on the screen. There are scenes in this that look like something that would be seen in a budget on the same level as something like The Multiverse of Madness, but this is done with a much smaller budget. But the real reason why this movie stands out so well is Michelle Yeoh. I mean, this was a movie that she rightfully deserved the Best Actress Oscar for the year this came out. She's been a great actress for years. In Crazy Rich Asians, she was great. Lesser stuff like Last Christmas is another example where she steals the show. She does it in nearly everything she's in. She's given her all in this, and she's absolutely pitch perfect in this. This is a great performance that I was so glad to see it win Best Actress at the Academy Awards for her. She well and more than deserved it. You also have a really good cast as well. Stephanie Hsu as her daughter is great. Ki Hu Kwan, very good. Another great performance that led to an Academy Award for him. Jamie Lee Curtis got an Oscar for this, which was surprising, but I thought it worked. James Hong is great in this. Jenny Slate, Harry Shum Jr., a very good cast in this film. The comedic and dramatic elements are nicely blended together and very well done. It's an impressive feat of a film. It's a film that really does show what the definition of Best Picture at the Oscars it means. This is a film that should have won Best Picture that year. It did. That's what I think of when I think of a Best Picture winner. The film that's going to stand the test of time in that year it comes out. We had it last year with Oppenheimer. We had it this year with this particular year with Everything Everywhere All at Once. So hopefully the Oscars won't make that same decision later tonight, but then again, who knows? Watch it. Watch. They'll give Conclave or Amelia Perez the Best Picture. Watch. Speaking of Oppenheimer, that's actually number 5 on my list of the best movies of the decade so far. Christopher Nolan's story about the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer, of course, the American theoretical physicist who helps develop the first nuclear weapons during World War II. This is based off the book of the same name, the book of American Prometheus, which dramatizes Oppenheimer's studies, his direction of the Los Alamos laboratory, and his 1954 secretary hearing. Cillian Murphy stars as Oppenheimer alongside a stacked cast that includes Robert Downey Jr., who won an Oscar for this for Best Supporting Actor, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, Casey Affleck, Rami Malek, Kenneth Branagh, all across the board, star talent everywhere. This was Christopher Nolan doing what Christopher Nolan does so well. This was a film that was so stylistic and so well done. This is a perfect example of a 3-hour film that never feels like you're sitting there for 3 hours. You're getting so invested in everything that's going on in this story, waiting for the moment the bomb's going to drop. And when the bomb drops, you think that's going to be the end of the movie. But no, we still got a long wait. We still got another hour to go. And it never feels like they're pushing their luck with this. Everything about this movie just works so well. The visual aspect, the tension aspect, the way it's shot, the acting, just incredible stuff. It's a movie where it really is hard to say if this is Christopher Nolan's best film as a director as a whole, but it comes pretty damn close. I mean, it's that impressively done in terms of what this film was able to accomplish. This is such a good film, a really damn good film, easily one of the best movies of the decade. Oppenheimer, need I say more about it? Great film. Number 5 on my list of the best of the decade so far. Coming in at number 4 on my list, we have the best movie I saw in 2022, and that is The Batman, Matt Reeves' feature film version of The Dark Knight, featuring Robert Pattinson as the Dark Knight Batman. And yeah, Batman has definitely had a lot of great movies, but this is definitely one that's very high up on the list of those movies. You have the Riddler, played by Paul Dano, who's a sadistic serial killer, and he begins murdering key political figures in Gotham, and Batman is forced to investigate the city's hidden corruption and question his family's involvement. And this is such a very, very good movie that I was so let down by the fact that this did not win a Best Picture Oscar nomination in 2023. I was very disappointed by that, and yeah, this movie definitely deserved it. This is an amazing piece of filmmaking. This is an impressive feat of filmmaking, even for a superhero movie. This is well done. It's about as close to an epic Batman movie that we've gotten since The Dark Knight. In fact, this is up there, very high up there, second best live-action Batman movie since The Dark Knight. And there are times when it does reaches those levels that Dark Knight did, and even kind of surpasses them at times. It's a dark and grisly looking Batman movie, and there's definitely elements and homages to movies like Seven and The Godfather. It moves about as close to R-rated material as you can get while staying in the PG-13 category, and I really love how the movie doesn't pull back and is allowed to go as dark and insane as it wants to. They get away with a lot of heavy, violent imagery in this in a PG-13 movie. It never feels like they were told to push back, and they go as far as they can make it go. And the look of Gotham in here is very impressive to look at. This is done by the same cinematographer that did Dune, Greg Fraser, and the production design of Gotham looks like an amalgamation of Chicago and New York City, and it leads into a very impressive-looking Gotham City. I love how the camera work plays out. There's a great scene early on in the movie where somebody is talking on the phone, in a darkly lit room watching TV, and there's nobody behind him at first. And then they show that there's nobody behind him at first. But when he shuts the TV off and walks away, there's the Riddler. Glasses there and all, just him standing in the background. And I legitimately jumped. Like, that's the definition of a really damn good jump scare. Like, when that is that, it didn't need to involve any horror movie tactics. Like, just having somebody just randomly show up behind you like that, and me having to jump as I did when I first saw that. Yeah, I gotta give him a lot of props for that. And Robert Pattinson really evolved as an actor, too, since the Twilight films, and has most of that cast out, except, of course, for Taylor Lautner, but Pattinson was really damn good as Batman. I love how in here, most of the time is Pattinson as Batman, and how his approach to play it as well as he does. It's almost kind of ASMR, where he's mostly talking softly and quietly while doing the scruffy Batman voice. It works here, and I really like how the majority of the film is Batman on screen, while Bruce Wayne is more of a reduced role. Not to say that Bruce Wayne is bad for him in this, but when he plays Bruce Wayne, he does a commendable job, but when he's Batman, he's absolutely incredible. I love how the movie explores more of the detective aspect of Batman and how he's able to solve these mysteries in this case. The cast overall is great. Zoe Kravitz is great as Catwoman. She's very fun to watch. I like the chemistry between her and Batman, playing and working off each other. Andy Serkis is very good as Alfred. I mean, this is a guy that I like how they take the elements from the Pennyworth TV series as well as the animated series by telling us that Alfred was a spy back in the day. He does a great job playing the father figure to Bruce now, and has a genuinely great moment in a hospital scene later in the film. I thought Paul Dano was pretty good as the Riddler. He's been an incredible actor for a number of years, man. Little Miss Sunshine, There Will Be Blood, Prisoners. I thought he was great. He does a great job of being over the top in this, but also genuinely terrifying at times. There are times when he's very chilling. And yeah, he gets a little too Joker-esque in his performance at times, like he's trying to create a Heath Ledger-style performance. But it's never too distracting to take me out of that character as a whole. Jeffrey Wright, I think, is very good as James Gordon. I like the fact that Batman and him work together to solve the crime and find the Riddler. It's not often you get to see these two work with each other in a Batman movie, so it's refreshing to see that. Colin Farrell is great as the Penguin, of course, clearly having a ball with that role. The makeup work is incredibly done, and Farrell is obviously having a ton of fun playing this role. And, of course, with the spin-off show that came out in the last couple of years, you can definitely tell that he still loves playing that role. The best performance in that film that sadly went under the radar was John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. A performance that should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor that year. He was incredible in that film, giving this great somber performance while still carrying those Turturro mannerisms that we've come to expect from him. He wasn't seeing a lot of the footage in the trailers, but man, in the movie, he knocks that performance out of the park, and I was really pulling for this film to get awards attention for that, but sadly, it was not meant to be. And yeah, there are definitely a lot of things about this film that really are not that great. There's definitely parts where I think the newscasters in the film are a little too excited when the murders take place. There's definitely parts where, there's a whole thing where like they're dealing with a psychotic killer and airing everything he's doing live on the air instead of being a little more somber, disheartened by what's going on. They treat the story as like it's not a big deal whatsoever. Like, I remember my review, I said that I was expecting a point when the news reporters would be like, the victim's head was slashed over with a hacksaw. And there was also a report of slashing prices at your local Walmart. Like, I'm not expecting Oscar caliber acting from the extras in this, but you gotta at least act like a real newscaster, for God's sakes. The third act, I really do feel like, does drag on a lot. Like, there's definitely it's not as bad as Wonder Woman, where they add in a really pointless, overblown CG climax in the last 10 minutes. But there's definitely a part where it's just like, the mayor of the town, played very well by this actress, Jane Lawson, and she's at this convention, and there's water flooding outside the stadium there, and people coming in from safety, and she's like, I need to go out and speak to the people. When she does that, my first thought was, so you've chosen death, because Riddler's followers are clearly shown on the top of the scoreboard, ready to shoot down the mayor, and guess what happens? She gets shot and is bleeding out. It's just like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, those little moments are very nitpicky and literally could have taken my enjoyment away from the film, but the film was just so good on its own merits. Like, it's just, I can't recommend this movie enough. This is definitely a towering achievement for Matt Reeves. It's one of the best Batman movies ever made, one of the best superhero movies ever made, one of the best movies of the decade, one of the best movies of the, like I said, one of the best movies of the decade. Just a great, great film. Dark, gritty, violent. Matt Reeves, you delivered another home run of a film. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with the Batman Part 2. Hopefully it will pay out as well as this did. The Batman, my number 4 favorite film of 2020 so far. Number 3 on my list of my favorite movies of the decade so far, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the long-awaited sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, and the first of the two-part conclusion of the series, Beyond the Spider-Verse, which has yet to get an official release date. And considering how this leaves us on a cliffhanger, I really hope that they are saving that time to put together the best damn ending they can, because, yeah, this movie exceeded my expectations, and this is a film that's very close to Into the Spider-Verse as one of my favorite movies of all time. In this one, you have Miles going on an adventure with Gwen Stacy, once again played by Haley Steinfeld. Miles is played by Shamik Moore, across the multiverse, where he meets a team of spider people led by Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, played by Oscar Isaac, known as the Spider Society, but comes into conflict with them over handling a new threat in the form of the Spot, played by Jason Schwartzman. And the brilliance of this whole movie is that it really does feel like a continuation of the story, and it really does continue to up the ante as the film goes along. This is one of those rare two-part films where not really much happens in terms of like a grand, I guess like the first film, like it doesn't build up to anything too big or too spectacular, because it's setting itself up for the next movie. And something like when you split sequels like this into two parts, like we had it's like you either get one or two things. You get something like the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, or you get something like the Hunger Games Mockingjay, where it feels like you're only doing this because, hey, Harry Potter did it, and if we can do that, surely we can do the same thing with this. This one really did feel like that they really went in saying, let's just go all in, let's go crazy with this. And yeah, for a film that really, not really a whole lot of big things happen in terms of a big villain overall, it really does up the ante. I love the fact that the Spot really becomes a character that doesn't really start off as a main threat overall, but as the film progresses and gets more and more epic and moves along, it really does feel like he's becoming much more of a threat than anyone could have possibly imagined. Plus the building up here, like, what is Miles Morales' purpose in these movies in general? Because we find out that he was not intended to get the spider bite that turned him into Spider-Man, and so everything's building up to what's going to happen next, and it has a great climax that really took me by complete and utter shock when I first saw it the first time around, because I love that this movie plays with your expectations so much, and it just makes you so pumped up and so excited for where they're going next with this. I've talked about this movie so many times before, I can't recommend this one enough. This is definitely one of my favorite movies of the decade. I really hope that they do not screw the pooch on the ending of the last film in this. I hope they give us a great conclusion to this, because, man, they're setting this up for something really, really incredible, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I've talked about this one so many times before. My number 3 favorite movie of the decade so far. Coming in at number 2, my second favorite film of the decade so far, and yeah, I said Ghostbusters Afterlife was my favorite movie of 2021, but that was only because I didn't see this movie until after the new year had come. This is a 2021 release, and yeah, I probably would have made this my number 1 film of the year, but I can't. But anyway, Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story. This is a film that I saw it. I really was expecting a lot from it, but it really exceeded a lot of my expectations and then some, because this is a film that every once in a while I'll go back to just because I love the way that Spielberg presented this. This is, of course, an adaptation of the 1957 musical, which was later adapted into an Oscar-winning, Best Picture-winning motion picture. And this is a film where you explore forbidden love and the rivalry between the Jets and the Sharks, two teenage street gangs of different ethnic backgrounds. And of course, there's a Romeo and Juliet relationship between Anton Yelchin's not Anton Yelchin, what's his name? I haven't seen him in anything. Anton Elgort. I'm sorry, Anton Elgort, who sadly, unfortunately, has not really done a whole lot since then. I think mostly because when this movie was coming out, there was a controversy going on with him, and it was basically one of those things that kind of killed his career as a whole after that. Okay, I remember it now. It was a thing where somebody accused him of sexual assault, and it really kind of killed his buzz as an actor as a whole. But he did later go on to do Tokyo Vice on HBO, so I don't know if his career is officially over at this point, but it definitely felt like that being accused of sexual harassment definitely kind of killed his career as a whole, which is a shame because he really is very good in the movie. And he falls in love with this woman played by Rachel Zegler, who of course is dealing with a lot of her own controversies right now, which I really think people are over exaggerating that. I mean, I mean, Rachel Zegler has really become a pretty damn good actress in the years since this came out. And for Steven Spielberg, man, the dude is still kicking ass as a filmmaker. It is in his nearing 80 years old. Like, he's been really good this decade so far with this, and then also The Fabelmans, which was a close runner-up to be on this list of the best of the decade. I really love that movie a lot, but it finally took him 50 years to do a musical. Not just a musical remake of an Oscar-winning Best Picture, and it's a passion project for Spielberg for the longest time, and usually when you have a passion project, it does not live up to the long wait. But in the case of West Side Story, not only does it live up to the long wait, but it makes for one of the Spielberg's best movies I've seen in a long, long time. I really enjoyed the hell out of this movie, and it's one of the reasons why I don't like making those top 10 lists at the end of it's immediately after the end of the year, because I would miss out on movies like this, and this one could have easily been the best movie I saw in 2021, but because I saw it early in 22, technically it doesn't consider into my top 10 list as a whole, but this would have definitely been my number one of 2021 if I'd seen it before the year ended. But regardless, it's a well-made movie. It doesn't really have a ton of flaws to it whatsoever. From the visual look of the film, the cinematography and the lighting is very well done. The lighting in this is nicely presented to show what the characters are feeling in that moment. Like, you get all these different color palettes to get across what a character is feeling, as well as the whole mood of the situation taking place. It's really well done stuff. The cast overall, incredible. Like, whoever got the one that did the casting for this should have gotten an Oscar for just how they handled the casting for this. I mean, as I said, Anson Elgort is very good as Tony. It's a really hard role to play, and he sells it and knocks it out of the park. Rachel Zegler is great as Maria. This is a performance that's a star-making performance, and like I said, she has been absolutely incredible in everything I've seen her in. Like, even in the movies where I've been like, yeah, this wasn't really that good. Like Shazam! Fury of the Gods, I didn't think was all that great. She's still carrying a lot of the load in that movie, and she really is showing. Like, she's still a really damn good actress, which I'm hoping that she's going to be the one thing that lifts Snow White to another level later in the month. Even if the movie turns out to be bad, I'm hoping that she's great in that. But this is a star in the making, man. She is incredible in this. She's beautiful, and when she's on screen, she steals the show. She's that good of a performance. It's just such a good performance in this. Mike Faist as Riff. Talk about another star-making performance in this. The guy is incredible. And this is another one that should have been an Oscar-nominated performance. And I'm glad to see that he's making a name for himself with this, and also Challengers last year. And Ariana DeBose, another woman who just really took control when she's on screen. Like, beautiful to look at, great performance, a damn good dancer. Like, she steals the show as Anita. And, like, it just saddens me to see that everything that she's been in since this movie has either been underwhelming or just a major disappointment. Even to this past month with Love Hurts. Like, I really want somebody to give Ariana DeBose a better scripts to look at, instead of turning into the next Louis Gossett Jr., where you win an Oscar and then it's pretty much, I don't need to do anything else for the rest of my life. It's like, but speaking of Anita, Rita Moreno, the original Anita, is very good in here playing Valentina, and it's like, this is another performance where when she's on screen, she steals the show and just shows that this woman still has it after all these years. Like, the music is memorable. They move songs around compared to where they were in the original film, and sometimes it works, others not so much. The choreography is well done. It's an impressive movie, man. A great achievement from Steven Spielberg. Great acting, great music, great visuals. Incredible film. West Side Story, my second favorite film of the decade so far. One that's definitely needs to be seen by a lot of people. Definitely check that out. Same year as In the Heights came out. Like, who says musicals are dead, honestly? There's been a lot of great musicals in this decade so far. Unless your names are Mean Girls and Moana 2, but that's another story altogether. But, so with all that said, let's get to my number one favorite movie of 2024. Not 2024, the decade so far. I feel like I'm still thinking of making the best of 2024 list, but no. Let me rephrase. Let me start that again. The number one best movie of the decade so far is DreamWorks' The Wild Robot. Now, even though I said Inside Out 2 was my favorite movie of 2024, it goes back and forth between that film and this movie. The Wild Robot is a film that I had a lot of high expectations going into it, but let me just say that those expectations were blown out of the wall when I saw this movie. This is for a film that this is the last officially made film in-house at DreamWorks Animation. What a way to go out on a high note, man. This is definitely one of their best movies, if not their best film as a whole. So this is based off of a novel by Peter Brown, who, and this is also written and directed by Chris Sanders, who has made a lot of great movies featuring memorable characters. Stitch, Toothless, I'll even say it, the dog from Call of the Wild, Buck. Even though a lot of people don't like the Call of the Wild, I still love the hell out of that movie, man. I love the performance by Harrison Ford. Very underrated film overall, but this definitely is right up there with Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, with Sanders' best movies. You have a story about a robot played by Lupita Nyong'o, who's a service robot shipwrecked on an uninhabited island and must adapt to its surroundings, building relationships with the local wildlife and becoming the adopted mother of an orphan goose played by Kit Connor. She also makes friends in the form of a fox played by Pedro Pascal. You also have characters voiced by Bill Nighy, Stephanie Hsu, Matt Berry, Ving Rhames, Mark Hamill, Catherine O'Hara. The film is impressive to look at. You can tell there's a lot of inspiration from a lot of classic Disney movies, because Chris Sanders, of course, worked at Disney. A little bit of Hayao Miyazaki thrown in there. It's using a lot of watercolors, just like Lilo and Stitch did. The score for this movie by Chris Bowers is incredibly well done. This is just a very, very impressively put together score. And this film reminded me so much of an 80s G-rated film. Like, this is a film that, if you told me that this was made in the 1980s and this was rated G, I would immediately buy it, because, yeah, there are times when this film can get pretty harsh. I mean, the main character in the beginning of the movie, he crushes a goose nest, killing many of the birds except for one egg. And you would not see that presented as like this in a film like this, in a film nowadays like this. Like, this is definitely something that would have been played well in an 80s G movie, like a Land Before Time or Secret of Nim, like that type of thing. That's what this movie reminded me of so much, and you just get so attached to the characters in this. The animation is very well done. The storytelling is great. Just such an impressively put together film. It's a film that I always think about every time I see it. Like I said, it goes back and forth with me, because Inside Out 2 definitely had a lot of elements that I thought were the best thing I saw in 2024. But this is definitely right up there with the best movies of that year, and just the film that I'm going to remember the most this decade as a towering achievement for DreamWorks Animation. I mean, this is really what we're seeing right now from DreamWorks Animation is a second renaissance for them. I mean, there's been it's not to say that they've been bad before, like they've had that stretch of really bad films like Disney did back in the day, but they have been really on a roll for the last couple of years now. I mean, it started with The Bad Guys, then we got Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, then the criminally underrated Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, an impressive-looking animation style in Trolls Band Together, which is probably the weakest film that they've done. Kung Fu Panda 4, which I liked a lot more than a lot of people did. And just recently, Dogman, which it really is showing what the studio is capable of doing down the road here. And it really does show that if they can somehow keep this pace up here, they're going to have that second renaissance that like Disney did in the 90s. Like, this is really right where a good animation studio should be at right now, with the best talent the best looking films they've had so far. Right now, they're kicking the crap out of Disney right now in terms of their animated films. I mean, they are just right now making one great movie one after another, from an animation standpoint, from a story standpoint, and The Wild Robot really is their magnum opus so far. This is definitely high up there with one of their best movies ever made. And yeah, this is definitely one of the movies that will be in the list of the best movies of the decade when we get to the end of when we get to 2030. This definitely is one of the best movies of the decade so far, and it is the best movie of the decade so far. The Wild Robot. Can't recommend it enough. So there you go. That is my list of the 10 best movies of the decade so far. And like I said, it was a very tough list to put together. And I know a lot of it is blockbusters, a lot of it is movies that are high-budgeted films. Like, there's no real like small-budget, underrated gems here. Not for the lack of trying. I did try to put some movies in there that didn't become the big hits that they should have been. There's definitely a lot of films on this list that I could have easily added. But that's why we still have many more of these lists to come. And I am doing, like I said, a best underrated movies list coming up very soon. And those movies will be on there. But like I said, this was a very tough list to put together. But there you go. That's my top 10 best movies of the decade so far. And let me know your thoughts down below on which films you would also throw into that category. But next time around, next time on this show, we'll take a look at the top 10 worst movies of the decade so far. Certainly a list that's not as complicated as the best movies of the decade so far. But yeah, the 10 movies that I have here for the worst movies of the decade that I'm looking at right now definitely are films that are deserving to be on this list. So we'll save that for the next episode coming up on next week's show. And I know Mickey 17 comes out next week, and I should be reviewing that film, but I'm going to hold off on that one until a couple weeks later, because I'm going to have it on the same show as the Snow White review, which will be on the 21st. But yeah, top 10 worst movies of the decade so far coming your way next week on the show. But let me know your thoughts down below on the best films of the decade for you out there so far. And I will see you guys next week. If you like what you saw and you want to see more reviews, check out my review of Bridget Jones About the Boy, Mad About the Boy, and then hit the playlist here to check out some other reviews I've done. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.